picture Antarctica, what comes to mind? Probably a huge, empty, white landscape, right? A frozen desert at the very bottom of the world. But you know, that picture, it's just not the whole story. This continent is an incredible place of power and mystery. It's literally the engine for our planet's climate. And right now, it's sending us a message we really can't afford to ignore.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at Antarctica's massive role as a global engine. Then, we're going to dive into the absolutely wild life that somehow thrives there. After that, we'll get into the pressures it's facing, look at the amazing experiment designed to protect it, and finally, we'll talk about why this century, right now, is the deciding one for its future.
All right, let's start with the big question. Why should you care about a continent that's thousands of miles away? Well, because what happens in Antarctica definitely does not stay in Antarctica. It is hardwired into the stability of our entire planet. I want to start with just one number to bring this home: 7.6 centimeters. That is the projected global sea level rise we're facing by 2100, and that's just from Antarctic ice melting alone. This isn't some far-off problem, it's a direct threat, with consequences for every single coastline on Earth.
Okay, so take a look at this. It might seem a little complex, but what you're seeing is basically the planet's circulatory system. Antarctica is the heart. Cold, super dense water sinks down around the continent, and that drives this massive global conveyor belt of ocean currents connecting everything. This whole process is absolutely critical for our climate. The Southern Ocean by itself soaks up about 75% of the excess heat and 43% of the CO2 that we've pumped into the atmosphere.
So yeah, from the weather outside your window to the level of the ocean, Antarctica's reach is just immense. It holds most of the world's fresh water, it's a hotspot for marine life, and it acts like a giant mirror, bouncing the sun's heat back into space. Bottom line, it is an absolutely essential piece of our world.
Okay, so we've seen the big, global picture. Now let's zoom way in. Because even with these insane conditions, Antarctica is just packed with life. Weird, tough, and incredibly specialized life that's living right on the edge of what's possible.
This is just wild. Buried under kilometers of solid ice, you've got these subglacial lakes, over 145 of them, like Lake Vostok. I mean, these are some of the last truly unexplored places on our planet. They've been totally sealed off for millions of years. Think about that. They're like little time capsules that could hold secrets about how life evolves in extreme places, maybe even giving us hints about life on other planets.
And get a load of this little guy. Meet the undisputed champion of Antarctic survival. This tiny, flightless midge is the biggest land animal that lives on the continent year-round. Its entire genetic code is the smallest of any known insect, basically stripped down to only the absolute essentials for staying alive. It's a true masterclass in adapting to one of the harshest places you can imagine.
And the sheer scale of life here, it's just staggering. The Southern Ocean isn't some dead end, it's a destination. It's like a global hub. Every single summer, as you can see from these paths, you have whales, seals, seabirds, all traveling thousands of kilometers just to feast in these unbelievably rich waters.
But here's the catch. This entire magnificent system, it all balances on a surprisingly fragile foundation: Antarctic krill. These little crustaceans are what we call a keystone species. They are the essential link in the food web, and their survival, which is being threatened by warming, acidifying oceans, is directly connected to the survival of pretty much every famous Antarctic animal you can think of.
And that brings us to the real conflict in this story. This one-of-a-kind continent, both a powerhouse engine and a delicate ecosystem, is now facing a two-front war against a changing climate and, you guessed it, growing human activity.
So, on one side, you've got these huge global impacts from climate change. Ice melting faster, the ocean chemistry itself changing, which is weakening that global engine we all depend on. And then on the other side, you've got direct human pressures. Everything from plastic pollution and fishing to a five-fold jump in tourism and even growing geopolitical games. They seem like different problems, but they are deeply connected threats to the continent's future. Just look at this map. You can literally see the continent changing. By the end of this century, if we continue on a high-emissions path, the total ice-free area could expand by almost 25%. A lot of that change is happening right on the Antarctic Peninsula, which could create new places for things to grow, but it also opens the door for invasive species to get a foothold and just fundamentally change the entire landscape.
In our direct footprint, it's impossible to deny. Just look at these stats. More than 1,000 seals found tangled up in our plastic trash.
Over 12,000 kilometers of lost fishing line. That's enough to stretch from London all the way to Buenos Aires. And tourism numbers have exploded to over 78,000 people in just one season. These aren't just abstract ideas, they're real, tangible impacts.
So, the big question is, how are we as humans responding to all this? Well, this is where the story takes a pretty amazing turn, because Antarctica is governed by something totally unique, a kind of great experiment in global cooperation.
This timeline shows this incredible pivot point. For centuries, it was all about exploration and countries competing with each other. But then, right in the middle of the Cold War, the world came together. In 1959, nations actually agreed to hit pause on all their territorial claims and dedicate an entire continent to peace and science. It was a totally unprecedented move.
And the core ideas of the treaty are really simple, but they're also profound. Antarctica is for peace, period. No military stuff allowed. It's a place for open, cooperative science. All those arguments about who owns what, they're frozen in time. And it's a nuclear-free zone. For more than 60 years, this thing has actually worked. It's kept the continent free of conflict.
Okay, so let's clear something up, because you hear this one all the time. A lot of people think the ban on mining in Antarctica is going to expire in 2048. That's just not true. The Madrid Protocol from 1991 prohibits any and all mining activities, indefinitely. There's no expiration date. To change that, you need this massive, incredibly difficult global agreement, which means the environment there has some seriously strong protections.
And that brings us to right now, to the deciding century. Because even with the success of the treaty, the future of Antarctica depends a lot less on politics now and a lot more on the cold, hard physics of a warming planet. The choices we all make globally in the next few years are going to decide what happens to Antarctica.
And here's the really tough part. Even in our best-case scenarios, some big changes already baked in. This data shows us that even if we hit the really ambitious 1.5-degree warming target, the ocean around the ice shelves will still warm at 3 times the rate of the last century. That is going to drive more ice loss and more sea level rise for hundreds of years. The momentum is already there.
In the end, Antarctica is like a barometer for the health of our planet. It takes the signals of global change, magnifies them, and reflects them back at us with perfect clarity. So the question this remote, frozen continent is asking us isn't about exploration or who owns it anymore. It's about stewardship. It's about responsibility. It's about our collective future. So, what is it telling you?